So
You're watching Global News Morning on Global Kingston.
Wishing you a great Wednesday morning. Thanks for joining us. Matt Lee returns. Every Wednesday we like to get caught up with real estate news and information pertaining to our region. CMHC stats recently released, and we've been talking about this for a little while now.
Yeah.
More stats to unveil, just showing how strong, how much in demand Kingston market is.
yeah, I think it shows a positive outlook, and I mean, I think, you know, it's nice. I like numbers, you know, and I like to look at and see, to dig in a little bit further and say, why are the prices doing this? What's happening? You know, we hear this shock and awe of sales are down, but then all of a sudden you turn around and you say, okay, well, sales are down, but prices are up. What's going on? You know, and it's all about supply and demand, and how close are we coming to the point of affordability? And I think that digging into this just kind of, I think it eases people's minds. It shows that we're still on the right side of the coin. But it still points us in the right direction going forward.
Okay, lots of numbers to get to.
Yeah.
Let's take a look at this first graphic.
So if you break it down, then they talked about the home sales declined by 9.8%. We've talked about that before, but yet it's a strong growth. New homes dropped to a low, or sorry, new listings dropped to a low of 13 years. 7-year high of housing starts, meaning new builds. 29-year low of vacancy rate. We've talked about this in the past, and then and it shows that it's 0.6. So in that whole thing, we're talking about sales declining. We're talking about the all-time low of listings, and those two make sense, right? Because all of a sudden you start looking at it and you say, okay, prices are up, sales are down, what's going on? And it says, okay, 29-year low of listings. If there's nothing out there to sell, or there's less to sell, people aren't jumping and saying, I'm going to buy this because I need to. It's just they're waiting for that right thing to come out, which turns into multiples.
And it's not an anomaly because we've seen this sort of trend the past several years.
Yeah, and we're continuing. You know, that's right. So, and then we look at historical home sales, and you can see over the past few years that it's gone up. And it started at 2014, and it just kept climbing. So, you know, you've got the 3,200, 3,500, 3,900, over 4,000 sales, and then we drop back down. And then all of a sudden we see that last year where we're dropping back down, get into the 3,600. So it's less than 2016, less than 2017 because of the numbers, and basically because of what we're seeing, not enough listings.
Okay, let's take a look at some more numbers, Matt, and talk us through the percentage change in actual sales across Ontario.
So it's sales across Ontario. You can see that we dropped just over 9%. Ottawa increased, so they must have been doing a number of builds in advance, and you can see that Sudbury, Kingston, London, and it just gets worse as you go down, Guelph, GTA. So the sales dropped, and then the average for Ontario was 11% in a drop. So what we're seeing is that says across the board that the listings are down all the way through, because if GTA is dropping and all the way around, you know, you get into Guelph, it's a university and college town as well. So I mean, in London, same thing. So you got Western and you've got Fanshawe there as well. So if you start seeing these places where they're making investments, you've got infrastructure in industry, and they're dropping, that tells me that there's just not enough supply across the board.
Ottawa was on the other side of that scale.
Ottawa was on the other side of that scale, and I think there must have been a forecast, or they must have been thinking ahead and building enough to kind of equal that out. So I mean, you might not see as much price growth there if they've got the supply, but you know, we'll see. We look across and we say, okay, it started at 290, now we're up to almost 370 in an average price.
And this is not representation of Ontario, this is Kingston.
This is Kingston alone. So when you start to see what the average price was and how it's just started to come up and it's spiking to a certain point, they're kind of expecting that it's going to level off over the next few years, right? I mean, that's kind of the thought, in the sense of saying we're not going to jump to 7% like the way we have in the past 2 years. Maybe we'll go back to a 3%. We'll see what happens.
Okay, we have about 45 seconds left. Let's talk us through the last couple of numbers here.
Yeah, so this is actually showing new listings versus sales. So you can see how that we've had these new listings climbing in the blue, and then the sales that are happening in the red. So it's not a lot more sales over the past few years, you know, a little bit, but we've seen the decline in the listings. So this is the actual chart showing you how the listings have dropped. This is showing you what is actually needed for purchasing, and then what is required and what we actually make. So this shows you that the blue is what you need to make as income, and then the actual income is what's needed for an average price home in Kingston. So when you're looking at this and you say, okay, we're still on the right side, so the blue is less than the gold, you know, you get into Toronto and it's completely opposite. We need this amount of money to buy this house as an average price. It's tough.
Okay, we had a budget come out yesterday, and there's some information regarding first-time home buyers. Maybe we'll break that down for you next week.
As soon as we get more information, it'd be great to.
Okay,
yeah,
looking forward to that.
Thanks.
As always, we thank Matt Lee.
Real estate tips brought to you by Matt Lee of Royal LePage.